Hello, everybody. Just give me a second. Typing in some minor things here. Hello, everyone. This is Lewis Bright Raymond, host of Quote the Even Lewis Bright Raymond, 28-year veteran of comic, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games as a writer, illustrator, and editor. Let me adjust something real quick on the camera here if I can. That's not really doing it. Just one more second. My cat decided to mess things up today. I'm trying to. Okay, that's a little better. I might have to do a different way. Let's see if we can do that. Okay. That's better. Still got light. You can still see me. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Wasn't expecting that. Okay. Today, our theme is we're going back to reviewing, or not reviewing, but overviewing a little bit of my history in the industry. Last week, we talked about my youth as a child and what got me into comics and role playing games as a youth. And we ended at the college years, which is when I started getting into um, fanzines and leading into the professional, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. But before we do that, I have to let everybody know that in accordance with the new COPPA regulations, this episode, Quoth the Raven, is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content that we will feature is kid friendly, the context of the episodes will address adults and inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is also the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well, rated TV 16 and up. And with that said, let's go ahead and go straight into our questions for the day. Got quite a few of them. And let's also see what's going on here. Oh, well. Sorry. Wasn't expecting that to happen tonight. Okay. First question is, what is your earliest surviving piece of comics related or other artwork? That comes from Miguel Acer from Chicago, Illinois. Let's see. Well, this is it right here. My parents and I used to do a ton of pillowcases and T-shirts like these. This is from Pillowcase. I had cartoon character shirts like Speed Buggy, Space Ghost, Jabberjaw, Scooby Doo, etc. And my parents did some Sesame Street character pillowcases as well, as I recall. I had Super Grover, Cookie Monster, Big Bird, a few others. And this was from a pillowcase that I did. It had Batman and Robin, Isis, like the Jordana, I don't remember the actress's name, but from the TV show from the 70s. It had Wonder Woman, as you can see. It had Superman, and it had Spider Man, of all things. um, I'm not sure why it had Spider Man on there. Probably, I should have put Shazam on there, Captain Marvel, because that was out there at the time, and it would have been all DC then. But for some reason, I put Spider Man on there. I don't know why. Yeah, this was from 1976. And the last time I tried to do any type of Artex paints like these, let's see what's going on here. I was at 85 at age 13, and there was an X-Men t-shirt that came out horrible because the paints were so old and dry, but I'm trying to find something here. It was kind of weird. Okay. Yeah, there was an image missing. No big deal. But yeah, the Artex paints are like these embroidery clothing paints that you can use. They're still available in craft stores, I think. They seem to be online anyway. And last time I used them, like it says 85 at age 13. I did an X-Men shirt, but it was just not working. But I kind of miss that kind of stuff. But I was like age 4 when I did these images, so there you go. Our next question is, do you have any of your old The Ram comic strip from high school? That question comes from Santos Rodriguez and Miguel Esser from Illinois. Technically, the only thing I've got was printed in my Wingman art book several years ago. Let me see if I can find it real quick. And that would be, hey, you, I'm the Ram. And it had the logo, but that's it. And that was, pardon me, 85, I believe. But that's the only thing I have that survived. I don't know if Grays Lake High School there in Grays Lake, Illinois has it. I guess it'd be Grays Lake Central High School now, but because there's multiple high schools in Grays Lake now, but I don't know if they have any of the records in their archives or not. Mike from Michigan asks, we saw how you got into comics and fiction writing a bit last week, but not role playing. Are you going to talk about that and how you got into that side of things? Yes, that's part of what we're going to talk about first thing when we get into our theme for the night. Next question. A-hole Anonymous, or a hole Anonymous, asks, do you really think your old work was any good? I saw some of that stuff and recently, and it was bleep. Actually, no, I don't really think that I was this great artist back then. In fact, I thought it was pretty crappy, to be honest, and we're going to talk about that. But you got to start somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to show today when we go through all this stuff, is so that people can see that, okay, you start at one point and you get, it might take a long time, but you're going to get there if you are diligent enough for it. And Ted Davies Art History says, good evening. Hello, Ted. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. And a whole Anonymous says, how many of your early works ever made it anywhere? Hell, when has anything you've ever done made it anywhere? Obviously, this is a troll guy, and that's fine. Everybody's going to have trolls. Ted says, great shirt. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm wearing a Star Wars Millennium Falcon shirt right now. There you go. Yeah, when has anything of my stuff done very well? Well, why don't you stick around, Anonymous? We'll show you near the end of the episode how well that was doing. Okay? Let's go ahead and go to the next question. TJ Lomas asks, are you going to show any of Edie Dye or Mufada 160 or St. Justice from your teen years when you were helping edit them back in the 80s? TJ is the brother of Kevin Lomas, who was the creator of Mufada 160. And he also did some other books as well that I was with both the Lomas brothers in the 80s there doing their stuff. And basically, I can't show Paul's Edie Dye for legal reasons because technically he was in copyright infringement with Iron Maiden and the guy who designed Eddie for them, for their mascot. For those of you who don't know what Edie Dye is, it's Eddie, the Iron Maiden mascot, as a undead cyber soldier, basically. If you're familiar with Rogue Trooper or you're familiar with John Scalzi's books with the upload the brain into the new bodies. That's kind of what that is. Um, but anyway, I can't do that because of copyright infringement, and I can't show Tim's because he's politely asked me. He's politely declined for permission. He doesn't want it shown anymore, and so that leaves your brother, and your brother hasn't gotten back to me. So if you want Kevin's Mafado 160 mentioned and shown, tell him to send me some permission or send me some samples or something. Okay. Next question. No, that was our last question. Okay, so if anybody else has questions, you can email them to quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com. Subject QTR questions. Please indicate whether or not you want your name and locale read on air. Okay. Let's start with the role playing. Now, I'm not exactly sure when I started role playing. I think it was around 83 or 84. Atari and DC had produced a video game called Sword Quest in late 82, and I got in that video game for the Atari 2600, and then we moved from Vernon Hills, Illinois, to Lake Villa, Illinois, and I met some teenagers, Brian Hogan and Mike Som, and his father, Mike Sr., who were into gaming, and I'm pretty sure that's how I was first introduced to the tabletop pen and paper RPG systems. About 6 months later, I remember skipping out of school one day and going to some hobby store a few blocks from the school and buying a 10th anniversary box set of the basic and advanced rules of Dungeons and Dragons and a collection of early modules all in one set. It was a 10th anniversary collector set, which was and it was some other modules. But the collector set was a compilation of then available basic D&D material in '84. It's protected by a faux leather slip case with gold lettering. And this is what it looked like. You had this little slip case here. And it came with my folders the images didn't show up right, but it has the basic rules, the expert rules, the companion rules with the player's guide and the DM's guide, some character sheets from what like they had in '81. The module Blizzard's Pass with 2 pens because they had 2 pens that had invisible ink that you could go over parts of the book and uncover what they were doing. B1 in Search of the Unknown, which was module B1, B2 Keep on the Borderlands, and X1 Isle of Dread, a combat shield, and mini adventure, and AC3 the kidnapping of Princess Arlena. This is I also got all these modules, which was like the Secret of Bone Hill, Palace of the Silver Princess, Maze of the Riddling Minotaur, Curse of Xanathon, Dwellers of the Forbidden City, a Sinister Secret of Salt Marsh, Slave Pits of the Undercity, and the Ghost Tower of Inverness. We played all these games and other adventures that we developed ourselves between '84 and '87 when I moved up to Michigan. As I said last week, Alan Dean's Foster Shadowkeep inspired me to write up a gaming module based on that book, which was based on a different video game that I never got to play. We also played a lot of the Bard's Tale video game on Commodore 64. And as our characters in that game improved, we would adapt what was going on in that game to our tabletop versions of the characters. We were playing them back and forth, so to speak. It was kind of a fun way of doing things. And we also were in the Star Frontiers and the Game of World RPGs from TSR as well at that juncture. I always loved Star Frontiers conceptually, but I love the aliens that they came up with. But was not very fond of the game mechanics. I don't think any of us were. So what we did was we adapted the game over to the D&D system. I played it that way, as I recall. And I don't remember much about Gamma World other than we did play it, and often would do crossovers so that our D&D characters could travel into Gamma World and back and forth. We just had this rule that anything that was like technological, advanced type stuff couldn't be taken back into the D&D world. You had to either give it up to someone else or leave it behind or whatever, but you couldn't take it back. Then came this little gem in '84, which I discovered in 1985, and this is the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game from TSR. And I got this basic game and 2 modules: the X-Men Breeder Bombs and the Fantastic Four Murder World stories. And I also found these, and this was the metal miniatures set. Now, as you can see on the picture, these were all painted according to the set, and so I was expecting their painted minifigures. Open up. Oh wait, they're not painted. I have to paint them myself. Okay, cool. But this is basically the game that got me started to get me to think about comics writing, because I was essentially plotting out comic stories as gaming scenarios so that my friends' characters could play them out. And so I would also play Champions and the DC RPG as well, but neither of them held the same interest for me as the Marvel game did. Not sure why. I think it's just that I like the Marvel games mechanics better than the others, to be honest. But it sent me on another spending spree. I got the advanced gaming books. Those are the first 2 books. And I got like, what was it, 8 different modules here, 7, 8 modules. The Project Wide Awake was pretty interesting. I remember doing this actual image on a grid and blowing it up for what was the class? Mechanical drawing class, of all things. So that was an interesting experiment. And then the Ultimate Powers book. And this is how I generated all my characters for superheroes in general. Okay. Every single super character I've ever done in comics, as far as creator-owned stuff, was generated probably between 84 and 89 using this book system. I've got hundreds of characters like this, and you're about to see some of them and how they came to be a little bit. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. And this would start to lead me to write to TSR and develop pitches for both D&D and Marvel RPGs, and generating new non-player characters for them to use in those games. TSR was more apt to buy the NPCs I created for D&D, since they didn't need to get licensing approval for Marvel. But it was my foot in the door into the role-playing game industry circa '93. And that's kind of my take on the importance of the role-playing side. I would end up working for TSR, writing and ghostwriting and editing for Dragon Magazine, articles here and there, between 93 and 98 or 99. And then I would jump over to Steve Jackson Games and work for them in 2000 on some of their products, and most notably their Comic Book Life e-zine news magazine that they had online from 2000 to 2003, where I would do articles, reviews, interviews with creators, and so on. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door, was by doing pitches for D&D and Marvel, doing gaming module pitches. And so there's that. But that wasn't enough for me. While role-playing would eventually get my foot in the door with writing and editing, having plotted out gaming sessions for years is what really turned me on towards professional writing. And I'd already been published by age 13 as a journalist, which I did talk about in last week's episode, if I remember correctly. But if I didn't, I did talk about it in my interview with Ted Davies, who was just here, over at Ted Davies Artistry on his YouTube channel. So go and visit there sometime after you finish listening to this podcast. It'll give you a little bit more info about my time in journalism. But I also started doing research books on the history of role-playing games, the history of the X-Men, the history of the 80s independent boom and bust, 80s independent comics boom and bust, that is. And these were released via university presses at very limited print runs, under 1,500. But it was money coming in, and it was experience and published works nonetheless. And I felt if I could do that kind of writing, why not be an author? But I really, really wanted to do comics. For the life of me, I can't explain why. At that point in time, I barely dabbled in art at all. We're talking around 88, 89 here. I'm about 15, 16, 17 years old. The occasional newspaper comic strip or random doodling was all I was doing. I was not serious at all about the art side. I was content helping my artist friends tell their stories like I had done in Illinois before I moved to Michigan. Or was I? And maybe that was the underlying issue. I wanted to tell my stories too. And when you're helping other people tell their stories, that's great. But you get this you get an urge to do your own stuff too. So I get it. But my attitude has always been one or the other. You can't do both at the same time. So I kind of took a hiatus from helping others and started trying to do my own. And this is about 1990 when this started, and I happened to be in college. And over the summer, I visited a comic shop, Tourist Comics in Sheboygan, Michigan. The proprietor of the store being one David Elliott. He was the manager for another party who owned that store as a franchise, Tourist Comics. There was like 4 of them in Michigan, I believe. And he had some of his own comics for sale that he had done. Northern Stars was one of them, some other stuff. And we got to talking, and he explained that he was the central mailer of what is known as an Amateur Press Alliance or an Amateur Press Association. This particular group was called STAPA, or the Super Team Amateur Press Alliance. He showed me their magazines that were chock full of original characters, reviews of comics that were coming out from the major publishers, and there was discussion of news around the comics industry and cartoons and television shows. And that was pretty much mind blowing. I'm like, hey, this is cool. This is great. This is what I need to learn. This, I can do this. And so I asked him if I could join the membership. And at that time, like many amateur press alliances, there's a limited membership, but you can get on a wait list. And if other people drop out because they're not paying their dues or whatever, you might become a member. So that's what I did. I became a wait lister. And I bought copies of the magazine if they had remainders. And so that's what I did. And I was there for about 3 years, from 90 to about December of 93. I was a waitlister and later a full member of that group. And at that time, I went by the nickname of Wolf because I was called Wolf because my nickname in my first high school was Wolverine, because I was short, furry, and violent, like Wolverine from the X-Men. And I liked X-Men comics, so there you go. But I didn't like being called Wolverine, so we shortened it to Wolf. But we did that. So I went by Wolf. And my review column was called The Wolf Slayer in STAPA, but it would later become what is now Quoth the Raven as a print column before I did the podcast. So that was the start of Quoth the Raven, really. And I was beginning to take art classes in college because I realized as much as I wanted to write comics, I couldn't convince others to draw them for me without the money to pay them. So I would do these really bad comics in STAPA. Not so much the concepts, but my artwork was atrociously bad. And I was swiping people left and right in an obvious manner, and I was too naive to not understand that even though it was a learning process, it wasn't the right path to be taking. And unfortunately, nobody at STAPA really said anything about it to me at first. But that being said, I was learning, quite a lot from David Ellier and from John Dennis's artwork in the group. This is art. This is the cover like Stappa 52 or 53, and this is art by John. John was working for Caliber Press on the Realm at this time, and he was also soon to be working for DC and Marvel. Um, he would do some annuals. He did a West Coast Avengers annual and a Wonder Woman annual in '92, and he would do. He would go to work for Malibu and some other places as well. And so he kind of led me towards Caliber, looking for work editorially, and that kind of did things for me. It was a lot of grind work, and the reality was I wasn't learning the real artistic lessons I needed to legitimately move forward to a professional standard. But that was not Stappa's fault. That's not what the group was for. The group was there to enjoy comics, and talk about things they like, not teach and get you, that, And John would try to talk to me about stuff, and it did lead me to become a slush reader, editorial talent scout for Caliber in '92. And guess who was one of the first people I recommended Caliber take on and publish? Brian Michael Bendis for his book Spunky Todd. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. But at this juncture, this is like October 91, you can see my work was puke artistically. I was copying stuff. I had no comprehension of what ink should look like. This is just terrible stuff. Horrible stuff. The only thing I can say that's good about this kind of sort of is I kind of like the Stappa logo, and I kind of like the charcoal for the sky looks okay. The rest of it, burn it. But you got to learn. You got to start somewhere. And because I was trying to do the art, my writing wasn't going anywhere near it should have been going either. So something had to give. This is still 1991. The Stappa version of Supreme 6, issue number 2. As you can see, my line art is all the same width. There's no depth perception. Everything's really, really bad. My proportions are off. My figures are terrible. Again, though, you got to start somewhere. I think that this version maybe ran 3 issues before I put the kibosh on it, because the third issue, which came out in December of '91, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, is when it dawned on me that all the art I had done was in relation to that issue was swipes from other comics, and that just couldn't happen anymore. I had to take a break from what I was doing and try to get my head straight and figure out what the hell it was I needed to do to become a comic artist. I was about to enter my 4th college, because and I'll get into why it was my 4th college. But if I was going to do comics, I had to get serious. By this time, I had started attending Central Michigan University in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. I'd had some difficulties with my previous colleges. At 2 of them, I turned in people who had committed crimes and gotten some fights with those individuals, criminals, and thus they kicked me out for my troubles. So I needed a fresh start. I was doing Supreme 6, the Dragon, which is actually Ryo Yoshindo, a.k.a. Komodo the Dragon, abstracted justice as fanzine titles in Stappa. I also had a bunch of other characters I wanted to do. I was working with Kevin. I can't think of Kevin's last name right now. It's not Seifert, but it's something like that, but it's not Seifert. I can't remember his last name. My apologies. But he had a book called The Spark. Yes, Randy Zimmerman. I did a Spark before you did the Spark. And I also wanted to try and get Kevin and TJ Lomas to join Stappa, so I had some people in the group who actually knew me and the kind of creativity I had when I was in Illinois would at least be some sort of level of support group, because I didn't feel like I was getting that from Stappa. And again, that really wasn't the point of Stappa, and it wasn't their fault. It was just something that was in my brain. It was something that I was, a sticking point for me. It was a problem with me and what I was thinking at the time. But I would start to get serious about mid-92. I started taking John Dennis's pencil photocopies and practice inking on them. Maybe if I could understand the underdrawing and structure of his pages, I could apply that to learning how to pencil myself. And that actually did help some. But before we take a look at it, let me show you what I was actually working from and what was actually um, the kind of stuff I was learning from. This is John's pages for the Terminator. I didn't want to copy his style, but I wanted to learn, what he was. He did a lot of good things, and and don't get me wrong, he had his own flaws, his own hang-ups, and he had a little bit of difficulty getting work with the big companies because of those flaws. Here's a Thor page that he did for Marvel. You can see the Rococo. You can see the Barry Windsor Smith influence in his work on this stuff. But that was kind of the stuff he was influenced me and getting me to. I was practicing inking on that kind of work and trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? If I'm going to take something out or add something, why would I do it? Type thing, and that really did help because even though I couldn't really do his style, which I should have been doing anyway, it helped. But before we do that, let me show you what I mean by everything was one with swipes. This was the third issue and final issue of Supreme 6. This is actually from the amateur press zine. As you can see, I kind of emulated a Byrne Howard the Duck there as well. But as you can kind of see, this is a Jim Lee page. This is from X-Men #1 for all intents and purposes. And there's no reason to do that. This is from X-Men #1 by Jim Lee, in a way. Some of the poses are. This is also, it's blatant. I mean, Cloudburst in the front is Xavier. Windstorm is, the guy standing in the background there is Cyclops, and the Osmia character is Jean Grey. I mean, it's pose for pose. The Silverwolf character is Wolverine. So, stuff like that. So that was the whole thing throughout. And when I realized that's what I'd done, and I don't know why I didn't think about it at the time. I guess I was just trying to rush things and get things done. So I would just reference whatever I could reference to get it done. But that's not how you make comics. And that's why I had to take a leave of absence in December of '91 and get my head straight. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the artwork by mid-92 and where I was headed. As you can see, this is much more detailed. There's line heaviness, there's line weight. The figures, maybe they're not the best. Maybe the faces aren't the best, but I'm trying. I'm learning something different, and I'm learning how to do things sort of from John's stuff. I can't show you the exact stuff that I was using. I wasn't referencing so much as trying as an inspiration because I don't have it offhand. Let me see. I might have some of it if I look real close here. I'm going to try to see if it's in here because I have some John Dennis art right by me. You can maybe see with the Adam Dorn character, this is his Tarzan. And you can see where his Tarzan was influencing my Adam Dorn version of the character. So, I would look at his stuff, but I would do my own thing. And it wouldn't look like John's work. At this time, I would leave STAPA to co-found a new amateur press association at Central Michigan University, student group. And I had found fellow artists who wanted to do comics as well by now. And I was learning to do comics with them and editing them. And I was getting to practice my inking skills over them. Some of those people were Chad Curry, Bob Nugent, Darren Peterson, John Napolitano, and Chris Burns, others. So we formed the Comics Artists Press Alliance at Central Michigan University in July or August of '93. I had stayed on campus over the summer that year and built up that core group of Chad, Bob, Darren, John. Chris Burns would come in a little bit later. And it was time I really started to move forward with this. But I did something very full-heartedly and kind of mean when I left STAPA. I left with a section posted, my last zine was basically, look at who I've got now, I don't need you anymore type thing. And I showed the artists. And regardless of how good we were or not, and that's debatable, it was very immature, and there was no reason for me to do that. And I regret that lack of judgment. And while I've apologized to David Elliott and numerous members of the group in person in the past, let me make a point of record here once more on video, so that if anybody ever asks, I was wrong to do that. Made a lot of mistakes there. It was just youthful naivete, and snarky, snottish Brad. I don't know, but anyway. But moving over to Kappa CMU really did push me to the next level, and it was exactly what I needed. By the fall of '93, I completely revamped Supreme 6 in terms of the art style and the storyline. You saw what I was doing in that when I left STAPA. And I was self-publishing it out of my college dorm room. I was also editing Bob Nugent's Interdimensional Task Force, Chad Curry's Hardball and Sign of the Cross, and Darren and I were doing projects together as well. We were going around the CMU campus and around Mount Pleasant, selling these in the Kappa CMU zine to students in the dorms, and going off campus and selling business around town. And this is not an easy task because you get met with a lot of rejection, but we each would build our audiences for our own books to a respectable enough level where we were making money on our respective books, and money was also going back into CMU's art department from the proceeds on the student anthology. Now, when we did this, we didn't just stop in Mount Pleasant. We went over to Saginaw, went over to Bay City, we went over to Kalamazoo, we went to Ann Arbor, went to Lansing, to all the different colleges, and we're on the campuses selling the kids on all the campuses because we tried to get them into comic book shops, and they didn't want us. We were black and white, we were the wrong size format. We weren't being distributed through the distributors at the time, whether that was Diamond Capital, Friendly Franks, Last Gasp, Andromeda, whoever. There was like 20 of them at the time. This is before the Diamond monopolization. We didn't have the kind of resources to do that kind of extended deal with the different distributors. We didn't really understand the business side of it at that point. None of us did. We were still, amateurs, kind of faux professionals, I guess you could say, in a way. But we were still making money on the books, and if you're making money, you're a pro. So anyway, this is what some of the stuff that we did back in that time was. If I can show you guys here. Whoa, something's not right here. Something is, okay, just give me a second. Oh no, okay. I got it. This is the Celestial Comics print pack set. This came out in March of '94. Um, I had three series at this time. Evil Angel was the actual original title for a series. This was my group of characters. I think you saw Adam Dorn earlier. Um, it was a rock band comprised of two were creatures, the guy in the bottom center and the guy to the right, a vampire, actually half human, half vampire, was the guy in the background, and a witch, who's the woman on the left. We changed the name to Midnight Angel um, because I don't know. I didn't like the name Evil Angel after I put it out there, and we changed some other things with it as well. But we did release it as a six issues series in '95, and it sold eh, uh, not too well. No, about 2,800 copies at that time. The Bus is the middle pack, and it says Heaven or Hell. And this is a series that was never realized. Unfortunately, never got released. Um, but it was a precursor to a series that writer Alan Westcoat and I hope to get to back to and get released someday. It's kind of a modernized version of Dante's Inferno of a sort. The guy wakes up in the middle of the desert and gets on this hellhound bus and he goes through the stages of hell. But I don't know right now if or when we're ever going to get to that because Alan lives in Korea these days and things are a little bit crazy in the world. So I don't know. We'll see. Um, and lastly is the new version of the Supreme Six, which you can see is completely. Um, you, if you looked at the cover, and we'll go back to it in a little bit here. Um, there were six characters. There were four males and one female. Now, as you can see, there's three females and three males. Some of the characters, there's no Silver Wolf, there's no Windstorm, there's no other. Uh, Cygnus is there, but the guy that looked like a Shi'ar now looks completely different. Has a different look, different abilities than what he did as looking like the Shi'ar. So, anyway, there were 500 copies produced of this pack set, and this is 174. But I got lots of them available. Everything from like 200 to 500 still available, and you can get them for $5. So if you're interested in that, um, just put in. Let's say, well, yeah. So let's just. I have to say 10 instead of 5. It's 5, but it'd probably be under 5 for the shipping these days, unfortunately. So if you want that, yeah, if you want these three prints in the pack set, you can cost $10 via PayPal to the email on the screen, and that email is Lewis Bright Raven, quote the Raven LBR72 at gmail.com. Okay. We'll take a quick. I'll leave that there for a few more moments. Let you guys take a look for that. You can get those three prints. They're signed. They're numbered. I've got numbers 200 to 500. It was not a very successful print set because I had moved. I got to do one convention in Michigan, and I moved out west, and I didn't get to do conventions for years, so it kind of got me screwed up. But this came out in March of '94. And again, you can order that at Quoth the Raven, LBR, send it to you at gmail.com. This is the cover to Atmosphere, which is a novella that I would write based off of Darren Peterson's image that you see there. It's an invasion storyline, alien invasion storyline, where Earth is being terraformed by the aliens, and they're fighting amongst themselves over who gets what part of the Earth, because there's 3 alien races with different needs, but all 3 are toxic to humans. And it sold about 3,800 copies. And this is a poster by Darren for a futuristic poncho that was BioWare that could photosynthesize and do other things to keep the human body alive from the terraforming that the aliens were doing. And it was also meant as the ad campaign poster for the company that developed it for the second novella that never came to fruition. It would have been called New Gaia because they go to a different world and start doing their own planet. And I was examining the notion of whether or not we as a race could travel to another planet and secure a new livelihood for the race, or would corporate greed sabotage us? Maybe someday, if Darren's available, we'll revisit this entire project and reissue it and do both books in an omnibus, but I don't know. But this is stuff he did in '93. And these were part of these projects were stuff that he did for his Photoshop courses and stuff like that. So it was interesting. And this was a far away my most popular character in series. This is the first drawing I ever did of him. It's done as a black and white book for coloring and activity book. And it's called Spacey the Alien Adventurer, which eventually became known as Adventures of Spacey the Alien. But originally I called it The Misadventures of Spacey the Alien Adventurer. Don't know why, just dumb. But I did this in '93, and this series would run for 80 issues. I think that's a pretty successful run. Ran from '93 to '98. And it sold at an average of 13,500 copies per issue. I think that's pretty damn successful, A-hole Anonymous. So screw you. And yes, I do plan on bringing this character back. I just don't know if I can capture lightning in a bottle the second time with him as I did back then. But he does look different now. I have it, obviously, my style has evolved over the years. You guys have seen this recent drawing of him. This is the new, more recent version of him. This will eventually get redone, finished up, and this will actually be made available as a shirt soon. This image with a new logo for Spacey and everything else. So that's something you got to look forward to starting by for Christmas, perhaps. Okay. Now, why am I concerned about whether or not I'm going to catch lightning in a bottle with him the second time? The reason I was successful with Spacey back in the '90s was because I was able to sell him as kind of like a kid's book, gift book, to daycare centers, to restaurants that could sell it with their kids' meals, stuff like that. And I don't know if I can duplicate that in today's world or not, because things have changed so dramatically due to not just coronavirus, the most recent thing, but really ever since we've had the problems with terrorists and stuff like that. It's a little bit different. You don't get to market yourself as directly as we did in the early and mid '90s. Chad Curry is one of our top selling guys at the Kappa Group. Hardball, his series, sold an average of 12,600 copies an issue. I would edit and ghostwrite part of the first story arc. Sometimes I'd even help with the inking. But this was Chad's book. This is issue number. This is a mock-up of issue number 3, not the actual issues. This is before it was inked and stuff, and the actual front cover was colored. And this is an interior page. I just got a quick scan of that. And we were supposed to do a book called Revolution 2250, but Chad got disheartened by the politics of the industry. Marvel kept rejecting him. Marvel kept saying, "Stop trying to be a Todd McFarlane ripoff." I don't really see where he was trying to be a Todd McFarlane ripoff. I can see some influence of Todd, but he wasn't trying to be Todd. He had too much Jay Lee and too much Simon Bisley and too much other stuff in there to say he was being a Todd McFarlane clone by any means. But Marvel kind of just shut him down. And even though Hardball and Sign of the Cross had sold well, Image did a little book by Jay Lee, who was one of his idols, called Hellshock. And Hellshock is basically a ripoff of Sign of the Cross. So those two things kind of just, between Marvel and what happened with Image turning down Sign of the Cross and then doing Hellshock, he just decided it was time to walk away from comics, unfortunately. And these are some early production images for Bob Nugent's Interdimensional Task Force. This series would run from 93 to 95 for a total of 5 or 6 issues, I think. The average sales were 5,600 copies. And, last couple days ago, I did a review of Villains and Vigilantes comic by Jeff D. If you watched that episode, you'll remember that I said that Bob's style reminded me of Jeff's, and cross between Jeff and Jim Lee. Maybe now you guys can see, you can compare the episode, the stuff, and maybe I'll do that here in a minute. Let me see if I can. Nope, do it this way. There we go. I'm gonna be right back. Okay. You can see that, and this is the Villains and Vigilantes type book, and maybe you can see some of the similarities that I was seeing. Again, these are just some of his figures, doodle setup figures, and this is not really his final, what his final artwork looks like. He's got a lot more detail in his full finished pieces, and I think that's part of why he used to get really mad at me, is because his final work doesn't look that rough. It's a lot more crisp and detailed, and whereas D's style is pretty open and basic, as you saw. So he used to get really mad at me when I would do that. Don't mention Jeff D. Jim Lee you can name, but not Jeff D. Okay. So that was kind of a thing between me and Bob for a long time. But I'll I never really saw Jeff's work, like I said, and in comics, I only saw the pinup stuff that he did in RPGs, and I was thinking the more detailed work of Jeff D. So we might revisit that later on when I actually have story pages of Bob's. I'm still looking for copies of the ITF books. If I have them in my collection, I don't know. I was surprised I found what I found to show you tonight, to be honest. But this is basically, what got me going. And when I wasn't doing this stuff, I was editing other people's books as well. We had 27 members in Kappa CMU. We were doing close to 50 different titles a month between all the different members. So I was doing that, and I was also working with Caliber, reviewing the slush pile, being basically the first gatekeeper. You get past me, then maybe the real editors will look at your work, type thing. And I was also learning my craft as an inker. I was inking John Dennis. I would also start inking guys like Kyle Holtz, Gene Ha. Let's see. Trying to think. Francesco, quite a few others. Chris Burns, again, the Chris Burns piece. This was 93. Me inking Chris. If you wonder what I'm pulling out, this is Wingman, The Art of Lewis Bright Raven, volume number 1. This is a 48-page book. It is $9.90. It's $10 plus shipping and handling. If you're interested in that, I'll see if I got a. You can do that. It says 1920 here. Here, let me erase that. Let me rewrite that here. There. It says live draw, but not worry about that. Wingman, Artist of Lewis Bright Raven, $10, 10 as it is plus shipping and handling. You can inquire about that at Quoth the Raven LBR72@gmail.com. And for those of you who might want to know what what it means by the sketch inside, you get a little head sketch on the front page. This is of Peter Porker's Spider Ham. Mm-hmm. And so you get a little head sketch like that, or maybe a little bit more than a head sketch. I don't know. You might get this is more of a head, it's still head and shoulders, but there's a Usagi Ojimbo for you. Okay? So that's what you get for 15. Is the book with a little sketch like that. Okay? But otherwise, the book is $10. And again, we'll look at the inking stuff I was doing. Again, that is over Chris Burns. Now, Chris Burns, you don't know the name, but you should. Chris is the guy who designed the costuming for Black Lightning for TV series. He helped make up that model for that suit. And he also worked on The Walking Dead as a zombie and special effects artist, makeup artist. And he worked on, I can't remember which X-Men movie, but he went into Hollywood and he went into special effects and he went into acting and stunt performing and stuff like that instead of comics. But he was always a very talented artist, as you can see. Here's another piece of Harold, the character from Interdimensional Task Force. That is with my inks over Bob Nugent in 93. And those are my characters, Cygnus and Windstorm. And if you're wondering if that's supposed to be like chest hair showing, no, that's like a little tornado on his shirt. But that's one of the reasons why I kind of took him out of this the Supreme Six, was because that design, people were confused about that, and I never really had. It's changed now; it doesn't look like that. But anyway, this is the kind of stuff I would do. I would ink Gene Ha, and he would send me photocopy pencils, and I would do ink samples. And if I didn't have Gene, there's a little bit even larger sampler. Again, I would do John Dennis. And this is my inks over his for Thor, Doctor Strange. He was actually offered Thor, well, not offered Thor, asked to do samples for Thor by Marvel. And he got asked to do Thor 3 times. He got asked X-Men 3 or 4 times. He got asked to do Spider-Man. John Dennis did, and he just never got the assignments. And that's part of why he kind of left as well, because kind of like Chad, he got disheartened, I think. But that was the kind of stuff I would do, is those kind of inking practices to learn how to be a better illustrator. And in future episodes of this show, we're going to revisit some of that stuff and show how I would ink it today versus how I inked it back then, stuff like that. So that's basically where I got started, ladies and gentlemen. And so what did I learn from all this? Well, I learned that when I went into college and we were doing this stuff with Kappa CMU, we had to build our own system. We had to learn how to, not to be businessmen, we had to learn how to build, I'm trying to think of the word, an academic program for sequential art. We had to build a sequential art studies category, more or less, for this. So we get our degrees in this sort of stuff. And I used to get in fights, arguments, almost to physical confrontation, but it was definitely a heated argument with the art history instructor, Richard Gergel, there at Central Michigan University. He's passed away now, unfortunately. But back in the day, he would always tell us that all the comic artists were hacks. um, you aren't real artists type thing. And then you go to art class, art history class, and he would have Lichtenstein paintings. Hey, this is a great pop art artist, Lichtenstein. He's ripping off comic book artists, and I'm like, screw you, man. What the hell? If that's fine art, then what the hell? All he did was rip off this guy over here, Russ Heath, and rip this guy over here. What the hell? Why are that? You telling us all comic art is trash? And so yeah, we got in a huge fight over that. I almost flunked art history because of it, but I got so ticked off at him. I went to the dean of the college and made my case to the dean, and basically the dean sided with me in the end, and it really burned the teacher pretty badly, but he got over it, I hope. But yeah, that was what I was doing. I was always fighting the system. In that respect, I was doing the same thing, fighting the system and learning how to do a business side of things differently with those guys when we were selling things door to door in the dorms and selling to different businesses, rather than what we do today with crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is a fine tool, don't get me wrong, but it's just one methodology. And I don't see where it's any more effective than what we were doing 25, 30 years ago, based on the results I'm seeing from everybody else. But 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Anyway, we've been on for about an hour, and nobody's been watching. Ted was here. I don't know. It looked like he disappeared. I haven't seen any comments since an hour ago. So I'm going to call it a night, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty much. And tomorrow, we will do Booktober Day 16. And these are books we'll be reviewing. Rogue Planet number 5, I think that is. X-Ray Robot number 2. And our throwback issue will be Gauntlet Comics, which was a division of Caliber Press, UN Force number 1, which was a very, it was a relatively popular book in the early 90s when it came out. And we'll talk about that tomorrow, okay? So, that will be tomorrow. But until then, if you want to reach me on Facebook, you go to lewis.brightraven, deviantart.com/brightraven, on YouTube, Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven, Gmail, Quoth the Raven, LBR72@gmail.com, Yahoo, Lewis Brightraven @yahoo.com. Our podcast normally airs on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thanks for watching, Ted. And I know some people who would watch weren't available tonight. Our friend John Dennis, or not John Dennis, John Norris, pardon me, had to, I think his play that he is the musical director for actually opened tonight. So I wish him luck. Wish him well on that program. He'll be busy most of the rest of the year with that program, I believe. So good luck to you, John, on that. And I know that Blonde the colorist will be watching later on. Oh, Blonde, you need to get a hold of me. You watch this because I got something that you worked on that we kind of want to review. Remember this? Do you remember this? I'll leave it up again for you to kind of see. It's what was this thing called? The Hyper Fanboy Premium Markup Variant Limited Edition Cool Generic Comic Book. Let me say it again. Hyper Fanboy Premium Markup Variant Limited Edition Cool Generic Comic Book. That's kind of an interesting deal. Do you really want to open it, though? Because it's sealed by the company, Comics Conspiracy, in the back. If you open it, it's no longer mint. I don't know if I want to open it and read it or not. You have to get back with me on that, Blonde. So anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.